31 years ago, Star Trek Voyager sent its crew across the Delta Quadrant, stunning audiences with moments of wonder and emotion. But behind that adventure, the cast paid a price no one warned them about. From shocking transformations to quiet tragedies, this is what they look like now, and what they endured after the journey ended. Kate Mulgrew as Kathryn Janeway. Kathryn Janeway, the commanding captain in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Kate Mulgrew. At 40 years old, she stepped into the role in 1995 after the original lead abruptly exited just days into filming. The sudden handover left no room for preparation or hesitation. From the moment cameras rolled, she was expected to prove that authority did not belong to men alone. Born April 29, 1955, in Dubuque, Iowa, Kathryn Kiernan Maria Mulgrew grew up inside a strict Irish Catholic household shaped by grief rather than warmth. Two younger sisters died in childhood, one from illness and another in a sudden accident, tragedies that fractured the family's emotional foundation. By her teenage years, the weight of unresolved mourning had already turned inward, manifesting as depression and alcohol dependence. That emotional isolation followed her into adulthood. Marriage offered no escape. Her union with theater director Robert Egan collapsed under pressure, ending just as Voyager began production. Even more devastating was a choice she carried alone for decades, giving birth in secret and placing her daughter up for adoption, believing it was the only way to survive. The eventual reunion years later reopened wounds she had never allowed herself to examine, forcing her to confront the cost of the decisions she made while trying to stay afloat. While commanding a starship on screen, Mulgrew was fighting private battles off it. 7 seasons of Voyager demanded relentless discipline, leaving little space to recover from addiction or trauma. Yet she endured, earning a Saturn Award for her performance, and later reshaping her career with her brutal, unforgettable turn as Red in Orange is the New Black, which brought her a Primetime Emmy nomination. Each success came paired with reinvention, as she struggled not to be consumed by a single defining role. Now, at 71 years old, Kate Mulgrew remains active as an actress, author, and advocate. She continues to perform, write, and lend her voice to causes tied to addiction recovery and Alzheimer's research, honoring the mother she lost to the disease. With an estimated net worth of around $8 million, her life stands as a testament to endurance, a career built not on ease, but on surviving what nearly broke her. Robert Beltran as Chakotay, the conflicted first officer in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Robert Beltran. At 42 years old, he joined the cast in 1995 as one of the franchise's most significant milestones. His character was meant to embody indigenous wisdom and moral balance. Instead, the role would become a source of quiet frustration. Born November 19, 1953, in Bakersfield, California, Robert Adame Beltran was raised in a Mexican Native American family struggling with poverty and invisibility. As one of 10 children, he learned early how easily voices like his were overlooked. Racial bias and financial strain shaped his sense of identity, forcing him to navigate a world that rarely reflected who he was. That tension never fully disappeared. Acting became both expression and resistance. Beltran earned early respect with Eating Raoul and the stage production of Zoot Suit, roles that centered marginalized voices without dilution. Voyager brought him global recognition and a Nosotros Golden Eagle Award, but behind the scenes, he grew increasingly disillusioned. He later spoke openly about how Chakotay's cultural depth was flattened by careless writing, leaving him trapped in a role that contradicted his own values. Rather than chase visibility, Beltran chose distance. He avoided Hollywood's spotlight, never married, and focused on raising his daughter while returning to theater and education. By founding stage groups and directing classical works, he reclaimed creative control at the cost of mainstream relevance. The decision narrowed his career but preserved his integrity. Today, Robert Beltran is 73 years old and continues working quietly in theater and mentorship. His estimated net worth stands near $3 million, earned steadily rather than spectacularly. His legacy is not defined by fame, but by restraint. Jeri Ryan as Kes, the fragile Ocampa empath in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Lien. At just 21 years old, she joined the cast in 1995 as one of the youngest actors on the show. Her character was defined by innocence, accelerated aging, and emotional vulnerability. Behind the scenes, Lien was barely old enough to understand the machinery surrounding her. Born August 24, 1974, in Chicago, Illinois, Jennifer Ann Lien grew up in a financially strained household as the youngest of 3 children. Acting began early, not as ambition but as escape, a way to contribute and survive. By 13, she was already performing in theater and commercials, learning discipline before adolescence had finished shaping her. Stability was never guaranteed, and pressure arrived long before preparation. Voyager offered visibility, but not protection. After leaving the series, Lien's career slowed abruptly, marked by brief voice work and scattered appearances before she stepped away from acting entirely. Mental health struggles surfaced quietly at first, then violently. Over the years, she faced repeated arrests tied to alcohol abuse, erratic behavior, and episodes that suggested untreated psychiatric illness. The most disturbing moment came in 2015, when Lien was arrested in Tennessee on charges of indecent exposure involving children, resisting arrest, and making violent threats toward police officers. Mugshots replaced red carpets. Court documents described behavior that shocked fans who remembered Kes as gentle and pure. What unfolded was not scandal for attention, but collapse in public view, without the safety net of fame or institutional support. Now, at 52 years old, Jeri Ryan lives largely outside the entertainment industry, her life shaped by recovery efforts, legal consequences, and distance from the role that once defined her. Her estimated net worth is around $500,000, a stark contrast to the global success she touched briefly. Robert Picardo as the Doctor. The Doctor, the holographic physician in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Robert Picardo. At 42 years old, he joined the series in 1995, initially believing the role would be limited and temporary. However, he slowly evolved into one of the most emotionally complex characters on the show. That transformation mirrored a quiet turning point in Picardo's own life. Born October 27, 1953, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Robert Alphonse Picardo grew up in a stable Italian-American middle-class household where expectations were clear and pressure came early. His family valued discipline and academic success, steering him toward medicine rather than art. At Yale University, he entered as a pre-med student, burdened by the fear of disappointing those around him. The tension between duty and desire became a defining internal conflict long before cameras ever found him. Choosing acting meant abandoning certainty. Picardo shifted to drama at Yale, excelling on stage but enduring years of financial instability afterward, waiting tables while chasing theater roles. Broadway brought recognition, and television followed, including China Beach and The Wonder Years, which earned him an Emmy nomination. Yet Hollywood often confined him to eccentric or masked roles, hiding his face under prosthetics and treating him as expendable rather than essential. Voyager changed that trajectory, but not without cost. While Picardo earned praise for giving depth to an artificial intelligence and later received a Saturn Award nomination, the workload was relentless. Directing episodes, writing, and carrying emotional arcs episode after episode left little room for rest. At home, his marriage to Linda Pollock slowly unraveled, ending in divorce in 2014 after 3 decades together, leaving behind quiet grief rather than public scandal. Now, at 73 years old, Robert Picardo continues acting, directing, and returning to the Star Trek universe through voice work and new series appearances. He lives in Los Angeles, balancing creativity with advocacy in science and space exploration. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his career reflects endurance more than excess. Tim Russ as Tuvok, the stoic Vulcan officer in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Tim Russ. At 39 years old, he joined Voyager in 1995 after years of near misses within the Star Trek universe. He brought discipline, restraint, and emotional suppression to a role defined by logic. Behind that calm exterior stood a life shaped by constant displacement. Born June 22, 1956, in Washington, D.C., Timothy Darrell Russ spent his childhood moving from base to base as the son of a U.S. Air Force officer. The family's frequent relocations, from Alaska to Turkey, denied him stability and long-term friendships. That nomadic upbringing cultivated self-control, but also quiet loneliness that followed him into adulthood. Russ turned to music and theater as anchors. After earning a degree in theater arts, he entered Hollywood without a safety net, appearing in dozens of small roles just shy of recognition. Films like Spaceballs and Death Wish 4 kept him visible but anonymous. Even within Star Trek, he auditioned repeatedly for other roles before finally being cast as Tuvok, carrying years of frustration into the performance. Voyager offered consistency at last. Over 7 seasons, Russ became the franchise's longest-serving Vulcan, later directing episodes and earning an Image Award for his work. Yet the role demanded emotional restraint both on and off-screen, leaving little space to process the cumulative weight of years spent waiting for permanence. His personal life remained deliberately private, centered on fatherhood and creative independence rather than public attention. In 2026, Tim Russ is 70 years old and continues working as an actor, director, and musician while also pursuing astronomy and scientific outreach. He remains active within the Star Trek community and broader television projects. With an estimated net worth of about $3 million, his legacy is defined not by spectacle, but by patience. Robert Duncan McNeill as Tom Paris. Tom Paris, the reckless pilot in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Robert Duncan McNeill. At 31 years old, he brought a nervous energy shaped by earlier mistakes inside the Star Trek universe. That tension was not accidental, and it followed McNeill closely from the start. Born November 9, 1964, in Raleigh, North Carolina, Robert Duncan McNeill spent much of his childhood moving between Washington, D.C. and Atlanta. Constant relocation disrupted friendships before they could take root, forcing him to adapt quickly or retreat inward. The lack of permanence bred quiet loneliness, and performance became a way to be seen without needing to belong. By the time he entered Juilliard, discipline had replaced stability, and ambition became his anchor. Early success came fast but unevenly. After appearances on All My Children and films like Masters of the Universe, McNeill was cast as Cadet Nicholas Locarno in Star Trek: The Next Generation. That character's shadow followed him until Voyager reintroduced him as Tom Paris, a near-mirror image granted redemption. Over 7 seasons, the role reshaped his public identity, even as he quietly prepared to step away from acting's uncertainty. Behind the scenes, McNeill began directing, discovering control where acting had offered little. He directed multiple Voyager episodes, then moved decisively behind the camera, earning respect on series such as Chuck and the Orville, along with recognition from the Directors Guild. The shift was deliberate, not reactionary. While others fought to stay on screen, he chose to stay relevant. Now, at 62 years old, Robert Duncan McNeill works primarily as a director and producer, helming major television projects while occasionally reconnecting with fans through podcasting and conventions. His estimated net worth stands near $5 million, built steadily through reinvention rather than fame. Roxann Dawson as B'Elanna Torres. B'Elanna Torres, the volatile engineer in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Roxann Dawson. At 37 years old, she embodied a character defined by rage, brilliance, and internal fracture. The role demanded emotional exposure few others on the show carried. From the beginning, conflict was her narrative engine. Born September 11, 1958 in Los Angeles, California, Roxann Caballero grew up in a culturally stable but quietly demanding Latin household. Pursuing acting over a conventional academic path created friction early, planting doubt where certainty was expected. While others followed predictable trajectories, she chose uncertainty, absorbing the anxiety that came with defying expectations. That internal tension later became central to her performances. Her early career unfolded on stage, from a chorus line to Broadway productions, before television brought steadier work. Voyager transformed her visibility, earning her an Alma Award and placing her at the emotional core of the series for 7 seasons. Yet the intensity of B'Elanna Torres was not easy to shed, and Dawson began searching for something less exposing, more sustainable. The answer arrived behind the camera. Transitioning into directing, Dawson carved out a second career with remarkable precision. She directed episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, then moved seamlessly into high-profile dramas such as The Closer, Cold Case, and Foundation. The shift offered authority without performance, control without vulnerability. Where acting demanded she open wounds, directing allowed her to shape the story instead. Today, at 68 years old, Roxann Dawson continues working as a sought-after television director and producer while maintaining a private family life. Her estimated net worth is around $6 million, earned through consistency rather than spectacle. Her journey reflects a quiet truth. Sometimes strength is not in enduring the fire, but in choosing when to step away from it. Garrett Wang as Harry Kim. Harry Kim, the idealistic young officer in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Garrett Wang. At 27 years old, his character was written as hopeful, loyal, and endlessly patient. Off-screen, Wang was still searching for his own place in an industry that rarely made space for faces like his. Born December 15, 1968, in Riverside, California, Garrett Richard Wang grew up as the child of Taiwanese immigrants, carrying expectations heavier than his age. His family moved constantly from Indiana to Bermuda, Florida, Tennessee, then back to California. The instability created a lingering sense of not fully belonging anywhere, culturally or socially. That tension followed him into adulthood. His parents viewed acting as risky and impractical, urging him toward safer paths, even suggesting military discipline when doubt overwhelmed him. At UCLA, Wang changed majors repeatedly, searching for an identity that felt authentic while quietly committing himself to theater. When he chose acting outright, he made a silent wager with his family: succeed quickly or walk away. Voyager arrived just in time to save that dream. Yet success brought its own quiet wounds. Despite appearing in all 7 seasons, Harry Kim was famously never promoted, a running joke that masked deeper frustration. While others moved on to larger roles, Wang found himself increasingly typecast and overlooked. He turned instead to independent films, convention hosting, and later podcasting, co-hosting the Delta Flyers, to revisit the journey that defined him, but never fully rewarded him. In 2026, Garrett Wang is 58 years old. He remains active in conventions, podcasting, and selective acting, staying connected to fans who grew up alongside Harry Kim. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, his career reflects persistence rather than privilege. His story is quietly painful. Ethan Phillips as Neelix, the endlessly cheerful survivor in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Ethan Phillips. At 40 years old, he tasked with embodying warmth in a universe defined by loss. The character masked trauma with humor. That duality echoed closely with the man behind the makeup. Born February 8, 1955 in Garden City, Long Island, Ethan Phillips grew up as the only boy among 6 children in a Jewish household, heavy with expectation. Responsibility came early, along with pressure to succeed and stand out. Emotional space was limited, competition constant, and vulnerability rarely encouraged. Those formative years taught him to perform resilience long before he learned how to express pain. Education became his refuge. After studying English literature at Boston University and earning an MFA from Cornell, Phillips built a reputation on stage before television recognized him. His role as Pete Downey on Benson offered early stability, but Voyager would redefine his visibility. Behind Neelix's optimism lay stories of displacement, genocide, and survivor's guilt, layers Phillips carefully constructed while enduring long hours in prosthetics that isolated him from castmates and comfort. Off-camera, life carried its own weight. His marriage to Patricia Cresswell became a steady anchor, and together they raised 3 daughters. When Patricia passed away in 2022 after decades together, the loss was devastating, quietly reshaping his later years. Grief arrived without spectacle, settling into daily absence rather than dramatic collapse. In 2026, Ethan Phillips is 71 years old. He continues to work selectively in acting and writing, carrying decades of craft shaped by endurance rather than fame. With an estimated net worth near $3 million, he learned how to keep others smiling while holding his own sorrow just beneath the surface. Jeri Ryan as 7 of 9. 7 of 9, the reclaimed Borg drone in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Jeri Ryan. At 29 years old, she entered midway through its run under enormous pressure to revive declining ratings. Her arrival was not subtle, nor was it gentle. From the first moment, 7 was designed to unsettle the crew and the audience. Born February 22, 1968, in Munich, Germany, Jeri Lynn Zimmerman grew up as the daughter of a U.S. Army sergeant, a life defined by constant relocation. Kansas, Maryland, Hawaii, Georgia, Texas. Each move reset her world before it could stabilize. Friendships dissolved as quickly as they formed, and social anxiety quietly took root. By the time her family finally settled in Kentucky, she had learned how to adapt without attaching. That emotional restraint became visible on screen. Cast as 7 of 9, Ryan embodied a woman stripped of identity and forced to relearn humanity, a storyline that mirrored her own internal discipline. The role demanded physical endurance and emotional precision, earning her 2 Saturn Awards and reshaping the series' future. Yet success came alongside personal collapse. Her marriage to politician Jack Ryan disintegrated, ending in divorce in 1999 after years of strain, secrecy, and humiliation. What followed shocked far beyond Hollywood. During Jack Ryan's Senate campaign, sealed divorce records were unsealed by court order, revealing allegations of coerced sexual behavior in public venues and private clubs. Jeri Ryan said little, but the damage was immediate. Jack Ryan withdrew from the race, altering the political landscape and indirectly clearing the path for Barack Obama's Senate victory. Overnight, Ryan became an unwilling figure at the center of a national scandal, her private trauma transformed into public spectacle. Now 58 years old in 2026, Jeri Ryan remains an active actress and producer, having reclaimed 7 of 9 in later Star Trek series while balancing family life with creative work. With an estimated net worth of around $20 million, her career reflects both endurance and reinvention. Her story is not just about survival after assimilation. Scarlett Pomers as Naomi Wildman. Naomi Wildman, the brilliant child aboard Star Trek Voyager, was played by Scarlett Pomers. At just 10 years old, she stepped onto one of television's most demanding science fiction sets before childhood had finished shaping her. Her presence was small, gentle, almost symbolic. Few realized how heavy that role would become for someone so young. Born November 28, 1988, in Riverside, California, Scarlett Pomers entered the industry at an age when most children were still learning how to be invisible. Acting began at 3, not as a game, but as a routine, with auditions replacing playgrounds and scripts replacing bedtime stories. Fame arrived early and quietly, bringing expectations she could not yet name, let alone resist. The pressure to be professional came long before she had the language to explain exhaustion. Success followed her relentlessly. Voyager led to her breakout role as Kira Hart on Reba, where she became a household name and earned a Young Artist Award. Yet behind the applause, her body began to fail her. By 2005, the strain manifested as severe anorexia. Scarlett's weight dropped dangerously low, and she was exercising for hours each day, disappearing from the show without explanation while the audience speculated. In reality, she was hospitalized, fighting for survival rather than relevance. Recovery was slow and private. When she returned, it was with visible fragility, but quiet resolve. Soon after, she stepped away from acting almost entirely, choosing health over momentum. She redirected her voice toward advocacy, becoming a mental health activist and founding initiatives to help others afford eating disorder treatment. The girl who once played a prodigy child now spoke openly about vulnerability, redefining strength in ways Hollywood rarely allows. Today, Scarlett Pomers is 38 years old, living largely outside the spotlight. She works as a photographer, designer, and occasional voice artist, creating on her own terms. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, her story is not one of burnout, but of refusal. Refusal to let early fame decide the length or cost of her life. Martha Hackett as Seska, the Maquis officer hiding a lethal secret in Star Trek Voyager, was played by Martha Hackett. At 34 years old, she brought intelligence and menace to one of Voyager's most morally complex antagonists. From her first appearance, Seska felt dangerous not because she shouted, but because she calculated. Born February 21, 1961 in Boston, Massachusetts, Martha Hackett grew up far from instability. Her path was disciplined, academic, and deliberate, shaped by elite education at Harvard and Juilliard. Acting was not an escape, but a craft, pursued with precision rather than desperation. Yet even with preparation, television offered little mercy, especially for women cast as villains rather than heroes. Seska became her defining role, but the circumstances surrounding it were quietly brutal. Hackett was never told the full arc of her character, learning of Seska's death less than a day before filming. Even her pregnancy was written into the storyline without warning. The character was eliminated abruptly, despite earlier scripts suggesting survival. Though she later returned in alternate timeline episodes, the message was clear: control belonged elsewhere. After Voyager, Hackett continued working steadily, appearing in films like Never Been Kissed and collaborating closely with her husband, filmmaker Tim Disney. Her career never collapsed, but it narrowed, shaped by the reality that strong female antagonists rarely age into leading roles. She chose balance instead of pursuit, building a quieter professional life alongside motherhood. In 2026, Martha Hackett is 65 years old, still respected within the Star Trek legacy and active in selective acting projects. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, her legacy rests not on longevity of fame, but on impact. 31 years ago, Star Trek Voyager launched its crew into the unknown, but the real journey began after the cameras stopped rolling. Some found peace, others faced battles far darker than the Delta Quadrant. Which Voyager cast member's transformation shocked you the most, and whose story stayed with you long after the screen faded to black? If you want more untold stories, hidden struggles, and real-life endings behind legendary TV shows, subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below.